Welcome to the third installment of Sambo for Mixed Martial Art. I'm Scott Sonnon, former U.S. National Sambo Team coach and champion. We'll be covering recounters. Recounters are basically counter-counters. In the first installment, we covered the basic techniques, the key mechanics, the key positions, and the key locks. The second installment, we covered how to counter those and start to tear down and disintegrate those mechanics in our opponent. In this installment, we'll be working to protect against that. This is one of the critical components in that you're learning to preserve and maintain your own structure while under dynamic tension. We're not going to be going above 25 to 45% intensity in your practice, but now with these flow chains, we'll be exploring how to build upon tactical flow. Your first recounter is the double slice. The double slice is reactionary, built off of when you're in full saddle and he tries to kick off. By kicking off, he actually pushes you into reverse saddle and exposes himself to a knee slice. This double slice that it's built upon is how many braces you need to put in place in order to finalize him. So we'll start in full saddle. Again, since these are recounters, you're beginning in position and he tries to counter that. By trying to counter that, he exposes himself to other vulnerable positions. So we have solid full saddle. We have our shin and our hip fold. Knee is placed down on the mat into his ribs. We've fire pulled down and begun to squeeze on the tourniquet from our slip knot. We went back, established a leg triangle, and buried that under his sits bones. By fire pulling down, we've removed all of the space so that he has the least amount of freedom. We can go into our back brace and start to apply our knife hand. It's at this point that he starts to kick off. He goes into your knee. Now what you're doing is, as he's trying to kick off, he's actually pressing into this foot. By pressing into your knee, he pushes onto this foot. So by his pressure, you're going to scoot around. As he goes to apply pressure, that pushes you all the way into reverse saddle. So think of this. As he goes to push, you start to feel this resistance. And let's assume that he has really strong legs. And you feel like your foot's going to fatigue. You feel like if you stay in position, he's eventually going to kick this off. So rather than fight that resistance, rather than blow your strength, surf around. Like take his force and use it to your advantage. So as he pushes, slide around into reverse saddle, immediately underhook. Can you scoot around? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to remove the distance between our sits bones and his body. So we'll jump up and sit on top of his ribs. Just right at his hip. Oh, sit up for a second. Right at his hip. Place your sits bones, but you're still on the mat. The second is we're going to underhook our own thigh so that we can firm the leg in place. Now if he moves to back position, we have this leg tight, even if we don't have our leg triangle on. So this is fine. Confirming his hands in place lets me know that he's not punching me in the back of the head. So I'm more comfortable with that. Once we have this locked on, then we can apply a triangle to confirm a reverse saddle. It's from here that we can begin this double slice. The first is bringing their thumb up and removing all of the slop between the nape of his knee and the groove of your wrist. Remember, thirds. So the rule of thirds is the bottom third of your forearm applied to the top third of his upper leg by bringing up your thumb as close as you can to the nape of his knee. Reach over and create a figure 4 on your own arm for the first slice. Now, this won't work against everyone. People with tight knees, you'll get it right here. People who have loose, flexible knees, you need a little bit more leverage. So from here, if you lean down, drop to your side, now you can get more leverage because you're using gravity to an advantage. Scoot around, we'll do that one again. So he goes to push, pops it off, spin around, use that to pop down. Underhook, establish your figure 4. Now, reach underneath, grab your own bicep, reach over top of his ankle, and you have the first slice. This is the basic slice. Like I said, this will work on people who have really tight knees. You scoot around that one. People who have more flexible knees, you need a little bit deeper leverage. So take your bottom leg, break your own triangle, and step over top of his. Now this is where it becomes a little bit more painful. So go slowly because you can easily separate his kneecap and break it. Step over top and create a figure 4. Trying to be careful on Ryan. Create a figure 4 with your own legs and underhook his far leg. Now, you're only underhooking his far leg so that he can't push off. But as soon as you're in position to fully turn this on, turn your thumb up and kick back with your foot. This overlacing leg, as you're going to kick back underneath this leg, but I want to show you first. This is the action, to kick back, and that's going to bring his heel all the way to his sits bones. I'm going to give you a different angle in a second. But you have to go really slowly on this because it's so super tight. It's impossible for him to release position. So you've begun in the basic slice. You remove and break your triangle. If you're slick, go as deep as you can immediately into your own nape of your knee. So your knee pit to instep. Then, as you lay to your side, I'm going to be really careful on Ryan. You lay to your side, go all the way down into your own triangle, and then start to come back to finish him off for the double slice. Your next recounter is the double donkey, and that's referring to the fact that he tries to counter your recounter by crossing his legs to protect against the knee slice from the double slice. It's not an unusual movement, and it's usually a misapplication of a closed guard. We're so used to closing our legs that we misapply that when people are attacking our legs. It can be a danger because as soon as you create a relationship of your ankle to your own knee, you expose yourself to a knee slice. It's what Sambo excels at, so pay attention to the fact that you don't want to misapply this or you'll end up in a bad way. So we'll begin with the double slice. We're in full settle. He goes to kick off, and you feel like his legs are strong and he's going to break your triangle. The top of your lace is going to push off if he pushes off strong enough. So if you feel that that's going to happen, don't fight here. Rather than that, as he pushes off, let your knee come up and surf around as you move in and underhook into reverse settle. So can you spin? Once you're in reverse settle, you move in for the basic slice. That's not strong enough, so you start to go over to add your own leg. But he knows this is coming, so to protect it, he internally rotates his leg, kicks off your leg, and moves over to protect. This seems like it's a logical thing to do, because now I can't apply leverage because he's protecting it with this leg. Unfortunately, that means that I can scoop this up and kick through and put him in a very painful hold, the double donkey. The goal is, as he crosses his legs, can you scoot over a little bit more? As he crosses his legs, you're taking his heel to his near sits bone with him in a half lotus position, as if he were sitting cross-legged. So you're trying to bring this all the way in, but because your arm is within this knee and your leg's over top of this knee, you're separating this knee. So let's do it again. You're applying here. You move to get that leg over. He kicks it off and protects his own leg. Scoop around, pull that in. This is important. If you just scoop here, then he's going to be able to extend. You have to pull it in, so his extension is really difficult because he's internally rotated, his hips turned inward. Then cross your feet together and scissors outward. As you scissors outward, that knee starts to separate. Of course, you could be really nasty and apply it here as well. So that's the true double donkey. Both knees are being separated at the same time. Let's go over the whole thing one more time. So we start in full saddle. He goes to kick off. You surf around. Move immediately into reverse saddle. You go to apply the single slice and you step over. He kicks off and protects his own leg. Reach all the way around, scoop back. Interlace your feet. Can you scoot this way? This is what I mean by interlacing your feet. Because you're going to take your knees and scissors them together to extend out. Now, that's separating this knee capsule. Take your thumb, pull it all the way up and back, rather than trying to press this shin down. As you pull back, that's what's separating the sinews of this knee capsule. So pull back, then scissors your legs for the full double donkey knee slice. So now in this version, the donkey kick. This recounter is the culmination of the several variations before, and now we have a little tactical flow once we're in reverse saddle. So let's begin with full saddle and his kickoff. Everything's in place, our knees down. This is tight. We've wrestled in this top lacing leg underneath his sits bone, so when he goes to kick off, we surf around with him. He pushes. We're not resisting here. If we feel it strong enough, if we don't feel it strong enough, we'll go into a different variation. We can control this leg. But if this is too strong for us to resist, then we're not going to blow the energy. As he pushes, we'll surf around, underhook, and move over to reverse saddle. Can you scoot around? So I sit down on his hips, then let myself slide, underhook my own thigh, and we'll begin again. So now I can first go to the basic slice. If that doesn't work, I come over top for adding on the extra brace, but to protect against that, he pops that off. He starts to move over to go underneath his own knee, but I pull it back and start to go on again, and that's when he resists fully by kicking. Now this seems pretty logical. If he doesn't want his knee sliced, then he extends his knee, right? Unfortunately, scoot around a little bit more. Unfortunately, by extending his leg, he immediately places himself into a full knee bar. Now, the knee bar, the basic knee bar that you should work on is removing all the space between his lower leg and your chest. So you hug and then lengthen. Because if you try and pull this hammer back, then it's your finger strength against his hamstrings. And you might overcome it, but he just as much might shrimp his knee out as you lay back. And this happens quite a bit. Now you've lost position because his knee is close to escaping your triangle. If he pushes it out, you're done, and then you have to restart. So in order to preserve that from happening, you need to marry onto his lower leg before you get down to the mat. To do that, skate your arm up behind his ankle and behind your head. Now it's not your finger strength anymore. This is mostly your bicep and your shoulder and your lat and your pec. So it's all larger muscles, and you can squeeze all the way down, lengthening out his knees. So here's his knee. My goal is to take this knee and drive it away. Now all I need to do is apply my hips up at an angle. Now I'm getting some extra stuff in here because the application is through his thigh. As I press through his thigh, I'm also accessing this peroneal nerve, the one that we kick. So by pressing upwards through his thigh, I'm actually leaning back while applying pressure this direction. So it's a screwing action. I'll give you a slightly different angle. So here's the knee. His kneecap is pointing this way, but I'm pressing up this way. That means that I need to take this hand and wind it back and take my knee that direction to apply the knee. I'm going to exaggerate for now. Knees winding over and then pressing away. And that's really painful. So it's a circular action. I'm not going to do this too much because it's really painful for Ryan. But that circular action is how you lengthen out and separate the capsule, because it's separated, traction, twisted, and then sheared. That's what causes the full knee bar. Now, I'll give you a different variation on this. We'll go through the whole thing one more time. So we'll start in full saddle. He goes to kick off. That lifts you up. It's so strong that you spin around into reverse saddle. Once you're here, let's spin. Don't immediately go for the knee bar. Don't think of this as a technique that you're going to attack, because look at the distance here. If he's starting here and you're trying to lift up, the distance between this and this angle is all freedom that you haven't yet removed. So if you dive into the knee bar, you might be in trouble. Apply the knee slice first. If you can't get this, add leverage. If he kicks you off and goes to extend, he gives it to you. So then marry on. Now, the variation that I'm going to show you is keep your reverse saddle triangle tight. Fish this arm through and pass it beyond your body. This is going to be awful for him, because we're also going to separate his groin as we do it. Take this arm all the way over and reach behind your back for a back brace. Take your knees the opposite direction. So it's separating his knee and pulling on his groin muscle, which is really, really painful. So let's show the entry from another angle. Okay, spin around this way. So here I am in reverse saddle. He kicks away. This hand swims through. Fish all the way through. Move your body back. Don't worry about the leg. It's behind your back. Reach back to back brace. Put it behind your back. Drive your knee towards his groin, and then lengthen out. And that, again, is really painful because you're attacking both the groin and the knee capsule at the same time for your donkey kick. In the Gordian knot, we take his attacking free leg and trap it. Once it's trapped, and I show you the special way to keep it trapped, there's nothing he can really do to free that leg, and he can't reach you with any strikes. So you're at a point where you're in relative time vacuum. You can do what you want and take your time to finalize the technique smoothly. So onto the leg knot. We'll start in full saddle. Our saddle's tight. Now, the only danger we have from strikes, he can't access us by fist, because we have our proper knee down into the mat, knee into his ribs. The slip knot is hiding underneath his sits bone, so he's having difficulty reaching it. From here, the only danger that we have are potential strikes. So we drive the knee back, he can't reach us. So what can he access us with? Currently, the only thing he can do is a small high leg over and try and kick us in the face. So from here, that's the only danger of kicks here. And it's happened in competition. I mean, you've seen it even in major mixed martial art competitions of taking one in the beak because you got too close and weren't paying attention to the fact that you can still be struck. So the thing is, if he puts this foot in the way, there's only one place he can strike. This is pretty ineffectual, and kicking your own leg is pretty ineffectual. So the only thing he can do is kick you in the face. If that's true, put this hand right here as if to block, but you're just tapping it. So when he goes to kick, once you find his foot, the more that he kicks, you just follow that leg. He can't really defend himself against the saddle if he's focusing on this kick. And once you trap the leg, then he's done. You take it and you shove it right to your thigh. Once it's here, pull it up to his thigh, break your own triangle and step across. Create a new triangle by pulling this like mission control up tight. The aperture here is so small that he can't get to. Release this foot. As long as hard, even if he did a knee hugger, he wouldn't be able to pull this out, and you can take your time to finish him. Now, what I suggest is keep this hand free because the space is completely removed on your calf. If you try and come in for a knife hand, you're really going to have to worm your way in, and you're taking a lot of time while you're actively pulling on this ankle to keep the Gordian knot trapping his ankle. So what I suggest is take this top hand and immediately go into what I call an elbow lever ankle submission. You're just taking your elbow back to cause the ankle submission. I'm going to give you a different angle on that. But the most important part is how to trap the Gordian knot. I want to show you first at a quarter angle. So move this way. Right here. So your saddle's on. He goes to kick, pad his foot, and drop it immediately to the mat and shove it into your thigh. There's space right here that you want to remove. So pull that up as high as you can. Pinch your knee to his knee. Now you removed all of the space. Then you break the triangle to step across. Re-grab your own ankle and chamber it as high as you can. Now you can see there's no space in here. So from this small triangle, he can't free this foot. Once that's in there, just maintain your own ankle hold and he can't free it. Now, I'm going to shift one more time and I'm going to show you a real close-up view of this elbow lever ankle submission. Shift that way. Full saddle. He goes to kick, pad the foot, drop it down, pull it up, pinch your knees together, step over, chamber up. Now, take this elbow all the way across as you hip in. That's going to point his toes, and you're going to use your hips as the fulcrum to separate the ligaments on his ankle. So you're arching your whole body as the elbow comes down to the mat. You have to make sure that you don't go high or you're going to release his toes from your armpit. So you're coming out to the side as you extend your hips forward to complete the Gordian knot. In the leg knot, we start to attack his free leg from the Gordian knot. It's a variation where, as he tries to mobilize that free leg while we're trying to stabilize it, he exposes himself to several different hip submissions. So let's start with the basic. In full saddle, the only other vulnerable position for you to open to strikes is that top leg. And the only viable target that he can pose a credible threat to is your face. So if you're consumed here, he's probably going to plow you in the beak. So what you need to do is extend back, tap the foot. As you go to place it down, this time he's a little bit more savvy. So he protects his own ankle, grabbing a hold. Unfortunately, by protecting his own ankle like you would if he were defending against the saddle, I can free this leg and come upstairs and block it down. By blocking it down, now I can take his hip across and come up and attack this leg while he's in a vulnerable place. Now, the submission that I suggest from blocking this wishbone, this is more classical Sambo. And I like this traditional Sambo move because he's not in a position where he can strike me and I can take my time. It's not perfect structure because I don't have my full saddle on. I'm sacrificing the top lace in order to block this leg. But it's very difficult for him to free this leg. He needs to reach over top, underhook my ankle, and pop it free. But I can try and use strength and a pseudo knee slice to keep it in place. So that's harder for him to get to. That's why I prefer this, or at least that's why I accept this in more of a mixed martial arts submission fighting setting. While he's occupied trying to attack down here, right? I'm gonna fake this, right? I'm gonna make it look like I'm having some effort trying to apply this knee slice. That's when I'm gonna take this elbow, like we did with the elbow to attack the ankle. I'm going to take it a little bit higher and wind his toes around to expose his heel. His heel pops up, and I'll scoop underneath. He wants to wind out of it. That, in order to keep him from going to his base, I need to maintain this knee so that this doesn't rotate down. That's where you apply the heel hook. And the heel hook doesn't require much because you block that hip. Otherwise, if this hip weren't blocked, it would be difficult if he steps over because he can release the pressure, right? That variation will come in a second. However, since we have that hip blocked, this heel hook doesn't require much juice. All I have to do is apply my hips. So let's go through that again, point by point. We're in full saddle. He's moving to kick us. Tap the foot, remove your head from danger. As you go to place it into the Gordian knot, he pulls and controls his own foot to protect against it, so that because he knows what's coming. If I block that foot off, he's toast. Instead, slide up his thigh into his knee pit. Pull in and start to apply somewhat of a knee slice, so that as he's fighting to free your foot, take this arm high, block the top of his foot, I'm going to show you in a second from a different angle, to apply your heel hook. Keep this knee from rotating underneath by keeping this thigh in place. So I give it a different angle on this heel hook. In position, pad the foot, drop it down. He goes to block it. Come up, wishbone his leg. Here's the elbow. You're trying to use your kinesthetic sense to find his forefoot, his ball of foot. Take your tricep into his ball of foot to push his heel upwards, rather than trying to pull his heel upwards with your forearm later. So just by rotating it down, since he can't rotate his knee, this is pretty much fixed in place. Drop your hand down and then scoop your back brace all the way across to confirm it in place. Now it's an easy application to roll your shoulder back and drop the toes down even more to apply the heel hook. Remember, I'm suggesting that you don't try and focus on this gross action for heel hooks. It has the chance of slipping the foot out, right, and losing position. It's too much effort and it costs you energy. Instead, drop this down, move underneath, and apply from here. Roll the shoulder back. For your first variation on the leg knot. In the second variation of the leg knot, you're going to be taking his counter to your wishbone attack and moving it into something tremendously painful. It requires that he is defending against the wishbone effectively. If not, you don't want to try and attack this technique or you'll sacrifice position. But if he defends against the wishbone, he's in trouble. So let's go into our full saddle to begin with. We have position. He goes to kick. We pad the foot and drop it down. Sometimes this could be even a push-off where we're attacking here, and instead of attacking the double Achilles like we did before, we can just slide it down and put it into position. But he feels the Gordian knot coming. He defends his foot. We go to press into the wishbone, and he gets smart and drives his knee over. Unfortunately, by driving his knee over, he puts himself into position that's really bad because we can lock this down over. This is the first. The second is dropping over this ankle. Now he's in a T-bar. Can you scoot that way, Brian? This is going to take his own shin into his thigh. So that's painful to begin with. I haven't gone down here yet. Once we go down here, I suggest that you stay with either the elbow lever ankle submission that I showed you, or rotate over and apply the heel hook version that I showed you earlier. But the juice is coming from here, of driving his shin into his thigh. It's very painful, and it's only from the application of the hips. The leg submission on the trap leg is rather elementary. This just takes a little bit of effort. But maintain good tight hold by kicking your heels in tight and digging these in so that as he attacks your legs to try and move that out of place, you're using hamstring strength. Yeah, the more he pulls, the more pressure he's going to put on his shin into his thigh. I'm going to take off the pressure for a second. Okay, so let's go over that again. This time, right? He kicks off, but he feels it coming, so he drops his knee over. Drop your knee over to it. Right. By defending here, come over his knee and trap that in place. Take your free leg, put it over top, so you've trapped both sides. With both sides trapped, dig your heels in to the side so that his shin comes in deep onto his own thigh. Then move up into the elbow lever or all the way around into the rotating heel hook from the previous variation. One last time. Spin this way. The most important part is figuring out how to free this leg. And this is where you might get gummed up. So I want you to see, can you move this way? And lay down right there. From this position, turn your knee out. Right from here, as you press this down and trap it, that frees this leg. So don't get so consumed to trying to bring this knee out. You only have to put it over. Shove it down so that his ankle is coming as close to his hips as possible. Then pull your heels in, like you're bringing stirrups into the sides of a horse. Come all the way across, keeping your heels tight. Then you can apply your ankle or your heel submission, your heel hook that we talked about earlier. In the third recounter of this leg knot flow, as he gets into position, he doesn't want to knee out because he's trying to avoid the wishbone, but he's also trying to avoid that knot that we just performed in the second variation. Now he tries to high leg over. Unfortunately, that will expose himself to rear saddle and he'll be locked into a knee bar. Really, we've covered all directions. This was born out of actual competitive application, so any direction that he can possibly find freedom, he's trying to explore, but it always exposes himself to submission. And that's the main point of Sambo for MMA. So now, we're moving for our lock. He comes to kick us, we pad the foot. He knows that if we go to Gordian knot, he's in trouble. He feels that if we move for the wishbone, he's in trouble. He places his knee over and he knows that he's in trouble, so this time he tries to roll out of it. Good croc roll. Unfortunately, all it requires is us winding around, replacing, and underhooking his shoulder so that now we're in knee bar position. I'll do it again. Watching his croc roll, since the tourniquet has released slightly, the tourniquet on the slip knot of our leg triangle, it's easy for him to roll. All we do is we stay in position, maintain our structure here on the ground, and he goes right into reverse saddle for us. So from here, we pad it, no Gordian knot, no wishbone, no overhook. He high legs over, let him slide underneath you, get that right behind his glute. So hammer that up as high as you can, slip knot out and around. I'm going to show you this from a different angle in a second. Now, the knee bar, we stay right in place. The knee bar I prefer is very quick on this one because I want to tighten up. Squeeze on the tourniquet now that we're in reverse saddle. Take this hand and shove it under your lower back and then apply your hips. So let's go from a different angle, switch the opposite side. Pad, he high legs over, all the way, slide underneath. Take your slip knot and tuck it underneath this shoulder or all the way underneath his belly if you can kick underneath. As you do, take this arm all the way through, elbow across, and hide it underneath your lower back. As you drive your knees away, notice how I'm burying my shin underneath his glutes. I'm going to hide it underneath his sits bone right here so that it can't slip off. If you're up on top of his glute, here, he has too much wiggle room to try and shrimp this knee out. That's the danger. So bring this as close to your body as possible when he's winding through and drive it into the back of his glute so that he can't escape. Slip knot around, tuck it underneath. If he attacks your leg, he's in a bad way because that's only going to press down on this leg, which presses down on this leg, which gives you more leverage on his knee. If he doesn't attack this leg, tuck it underneath his belly and kick up on his belly. As you kick on his belly, that presses this knee down, which presses this leg down, which causes the knee bar to hurt more. And to finalize it so that this arm doesn't slip and you're not using arm strength, make sure that his Achilles is tucked underneath your armpit, and tuck it underneath your lower back as much as possible, then lengthen out. So you're only using legs to apply this. If he's really knee shrimping, trying to kick away, just hold on until he fatigues slightly, and then apply it. By squeezing your tourniquet on, driving your knees down for the last variation on the leg knot. Before we progress on to the side saddle sweeps and recounters, let's take a look at the basic attacks so that you can have an opportunity to effectively attack in side saddle, because there are some differences in the manner of the tactics you're applying that are different than the full saddle. Pay attention in particular to getting the foot flat. I'll explain this in a second. So let's do this leg. Now, Ryan's moving his leg back here just so that you have a good visual to start with. What I want to avoid is lengthening out his leg. Unlike full saddle, where you want the leg long so that you're married onto the lower leg, in side saddle, you want to keep this tight cross hip. And this is a terminology difference. Cross hip, closed hip, open hip. Open hip is where he can start a lot of his passes. And we'll see these in a little while. To avoid that, we want to bump with the hips. And you're constantly going to be playing this battle of bumping his side saddle leg closed hip. Get the foot flat. And once it's flat, now you can attack it. The traditional Achilles is a little bit challenging for some people that have arms that are big or big bellies. It's hard to get in here. If you're relatively smaller size, you can hit it pretty easily, and if you're normal size, you have to work all the way, or average size, you have to work all the way in, slowly applying your knife hand to go for your Achilles. Now, since his foot is flat, the angle is this direction, perpendicular, so you have to rotate your thumb up to apply the submission hold. Drive your knee down and don't use arm strength. Don't try and arch here with arm strength. Drive this knee down into the mat while you turn your forearm up. And remember, bottom third to thirds. So the bottom third of your forearm to the bottom third of his calf. Now, if you don't get this, you can easily transition into the cross Achilles, which you'll get more often because his foot's flat and there's more room up here to dive down, to apply upwards. The only challenge is avoiding that you don't go flat on your forearm. You still need to rotate up. By rotating up, you can start to shave away the soft underbelly of his calf. Push that away to expose bone-on-bone contact here. Again, lay that flat foot down into the ground so that you have leverage. If you're up in the air, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But if you lay down on your side, bury your knee to the mat and into his sits bones, you can hammer that in pretty effectively. The third variation, you can already see this if I reach onto my bicep, is to come up across. I'm trying not to put too much juice on, and it's already making Ryan wake up. Is to latch on this figure four and then turn on the knife hand so it's at an angle on my own elbow pit. It doesn't take much pressure to push my knee away to get the tap, because he's already getting lightning firing up his leg. The final is, if he happens to squirm this foot out, you can temporarily grab it, reach your fingers together, or gable grip for full pressure. And that one's really painful, so I'm going to take it off for a second. If you're grabbing like this, you have to work on continually rotating the hand up. It's easier with gable grip because it's like the paper cutter that we worked on an earlier installment of driving the forearms together. But you have to lean into this foot. And you can play in between these. If you're attacking here and he's defending, so let's spin this way, that way. You're attacking here and he's defending, trying to bump the leg across, kick off, control your wrists. You might have to switch to the other side to get more control of him and you're getting closer. Or figure four him, and if the foot pops out, clamp down, and he's toast for your crowbar. The basic attacks are just like we covered in the 7 core locks. But the component is keeping that foot flat, working down to your side, leaning into his foot to anchor it into place, making sure you're at a perpendicular angle, and not forcing it, but going with his resistance. Moving on to the side saddle counters to those basic attacks. Now your opponent will be trying to come upstairs because he feels like if he can come up to the upper half, even though he's trapped inside saddle, that he's safe when he's not. So we'll begin in side saddle. And we've maintained closed hip. If it goes open hip, that's going to change things, which I'll share with you later. Closed hip, from here, when he comes around and goes upstairs, you maintain your side saddle. Notice how Ryan even bumped across my knee. That's okay. He's still not in dominant position. He may be upstairs. Here. Now it looks like he's in a good position. Looks like he's in knee and belly, right? Not with my knee brace in place. Underhook, grab a hold. Underhook, this shoulder. Take this leg and drive it out at the missing triangle point. So here's a brace. My far hip's a brace. So I drive that at a perpendicular angle, drive my top foot at a perpendicular angle to take him back down and reposition. Now he's in a worse place for his leg because I have it pinned down and it's easy to apply the Achilles submission, which you can see by his instant response. Because of this relationship, it's easy for me because now his foot's buried into my ribs. So let's do this again. Closed hip. He comes upstairs. He even passed my knee. Now he's out what looks like knee on belly, but with my brace in place. So let's spin a little bit. Yeah, right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this leg and drive it over at that missing triangle point. Point 1. Point 2 is his foot over here. That line, at a perpendicular line to it, is where our stance integrity is broken. So we drive that way with my leg. Lift both hooks up. Reposition the knee down. Get back into place. And then we attack this down leg. So let's do it back from the first position again. He passes the knee, comes upstairs, gets knee on belly, underhook, underhook, drive the leg, lift, reposition, pin that foot down as quickly as possible. With it pinned down, if you can go near side because it's quicker and you have more access. If you have to go cross side, that's okay, it's just as painful. Figure 4 like we worked before, and you don't need to go into the crowbar because there's no way he's going to release this foot. You can hang out here and just finish him. Your next recounter is a crack roll when he bumps open hip from side saddle. So I'll place Ryan in side saddle. Now, like I said, the danger is if he grabs a hold of this foot and bumps it open side. From open side, now this becomes loose and he can have viable attacks upstairs. As soon as he starts to come up onto the balls of his feet, moving up, now I need to go. So as soon as I feel that weight transfer, my first sign should be that he's bumped open hip, but you're constantly fighting that. So sit back down for a second. He goes to bump open hip. From here, I'm fighting to keep this down. He's fighting to prevent me from attacking it. But should he get this across, now that's what I'm looking for. If I can't keep him down by levering my knee down, keeping his sits bones flat to the floor, he bumps, he's going upstairs. Now I need to do the crock roll. So we'll spin. the crock roll, let's move this way. Both of us this way. The crock roll is going to look, we're going to move this direction, and I'm going to lengthen out this leg. So he's bumped open side. As soon as he comes up onto his feet, I underhook and lengthen this knee out and roll. Now, this is where the position, can you swing it this way, Brian? That way. This is where I reposition my legs, back, side saddle. Because from here, I also have some contact to his nerve cluster here, the peroneal nerves, as I squeeze on the tourniquet. Pack this in and finish off with a heel hook. And the reason I suggest a heel hook here is because you can drive the knee into the mat so he can't roll out or knee thread under. The roll out is going that way. If he tries to roll that way, he rolls into the heel hook, which is horrible for his knee. If he tries to knee thread underneath us, here, he can neutralize this. So I keep this knee pinned down in the heel hook. Okay, so let's go through the whole thing again. We'll start over here. He grabs a hold. I fail to fight this closed side. He opens up the hip. He goes onto his feet. That's when I underhook, lengthen out his leg, and roll. And scoot this way, Ryan. Now, here I have to reposition my legs, so it's not much for me to reposition over the nerves of his thigh, squeeze down, and that's already painful for him. Pump this into my near armpit, drive the knee down, slide underneath. And again, with your heel hooks, don't try and lift up. Drive your shoulder back. So instead of lifting to the mat, roll the shoulder back to rotate the bottom end of the lever down rather than lifting the top of the lever up to finish him. In the next variation, we're going to be taking that shin back sweep and immediately attacking into a crock roll. When he bases out to try and prevent that from happening, we end up in reverse saddle. So we'll begin in side saddle. He counters by bumping open hip and starts to come upstairs. This is a danger because he could eventually pass my knee, and I'll show you this later when we do the frog kick release. So as soon as I feel this, I underhook this shoulder, underhook this knee, and take this leg over to move into the shin box sweep. But I crock roll. Now, he bases out to try and stop this from happening, but it's too late. So I switch my feet. I can underhook his arm or underhook across his belly. Pop his leg up top. Now, I can do some nasty things here. Some really nasty things. You can go traditional. Go into a gravity sub, because I'm using gravity behind my hips to hit into his Achilles. You can go into your heel hook, keeping it tight, rolling the shoulder back. Or you can get particularly nasty and apply a footlock variation coming outside. This is nasty. Usually a footlock is the rotation in on here. But by turning the foot outside, you're also doing a heel hook to the knee when it's planted. This is really painful. I have his hip secured, really tight tourniquet, rotating out, twisting with my body, like I'm doing a crunch. Elbows in, he came in and fight back. So let's begin again. Side saddle. He fights and bumps that open hip and starts coming upstairs. Underhook the shoulder. Turn a little bit. Underhook this knee. Here. Turn back. Now, I take this leg over and I kick it. As I kick it, I release this sweep, but I crock roll instead and stop on my side. If you saw my feet were initially like this, but I instantly started moving them to switch to get my reverse saddle triangle on and move this across. Tuck it underneath as far across as you can. If you can see, my toes are popping off behind because I've wrapped them so far. Pull this upstairs, Lace your figure of 4 in. Use even your cheekbone to rotate that foot out to cause that heel hook foot lock, which is tremendously powerful. So please take it easy because the interior side of his knee is taking a lot of strain here. As you finish him in this second variation. In this recounter, I'm going to share with you a particularly nasty side saddle leg knot. It happens when, again, he's trying to kick you in the face because he thinks that that leg is free. And as soon as you trap it, you're going to bury it across his own hip, and then he's in trouble. So we'll start in side saddle. Now he thinks that this leg is free, so he goes to kick with it. I back up, and he'll try and extend and kick here in the face. Pat it like you would, and chase it back when he goes to chamber. When he goes to chamber, bury it across his own knee. As soon as you bury it across his knee, that's when you reconnect. When you reconnect, you come up, but that's where it happens. Because what's happening is, you're driving this down into his own thigh. When you lace over top, I know this looks like a convoluted mess, but you have to take your time. Bury this across his thigh. You release your triangle and go over this leg. Your underside leg reaches across and you perform what looks like a closed guard. As you scissors your knees together, that drives his shin into his own thigh. So I'm going to spin around and show you how to lock this down to the ground. Actually, I just changed legs. So from here, he goes to kick, pat it, chase it back, press it across. Once it's across his own leg, step over, scissors together, and then squeeze. As you squeeze, roll your knees down because now you're anchored onto the ground. And if you want to finish pretty quickly, pop it, closed hip. He can't move now because this knee is anchoring him and you're squeezing your legs together. You don't necessarily have to finish here because this is driving in, and it's a hip submission as well, but you also have a knee slicer. With the knee slicer, you're driving, there's a lot going on, a lot's causing a lot of pain. This shin's going into his thigh as you squeeze together. Now you can finish off coup de grace here, or you can bring it up in tight just with your hand to make sure that you're lengthening out the tissues. Because this isn't just one joint, this tissue wraps all the way across up this sheath. So by squeezing your feet together, you close it in. So one last time, point by point. Side saddle, he goes to kick, capture it, buried across his thigh. Rechamber, close your feet together, and roll to your side, bump it across your hip, so his knee bends. Now he's stuck. Scissors your knees together, scissors your feet all the way forward, bringing your knees together. Take the top of your hand, press his toes away to finish him with an ankle submission. Your most basic 3-step pass will take you beyond his ability to maintain his mechanics, but you have to work them in proper sequence. If you don't, he'll be able to clamp down, and you're actually increasing his ability to maintain these mechanics. You're increasing his strength by practicing this. So with your training partner, this is a really important flow drill. It's a great way to open up your practice and start training. So you both begin in dueling side saddles. We both have side saddles on. First is to pull of 3 steps. Pull, overlace before he regains his triangle. So you're pulling the heel up, overlacing. As you press this down like you would be going for an ankle submission, pinch his other ankle in and push this free so that the overlacing leg is cleared of the triangle. Then it's his turn. He pulls, overlaces, pushes. His triangle relaces, so you pull, overlace, and push. Relace, pull, overlace, push. pull, overlace, and push. And get into a flow with this so that it gets pretty quick based upon your sensitivity to where his legs are. Pull, overlace, and push. Now, as you're doing this release, there's some little minutia that you can add on to it. When you pull the heel out. That'll help you, because when you drive the lace down, press this into the ground and pinch his knee. If you watch, I'm going to pinch his knee outward already by bringing his ankle into my armpit. That's going to allow me to immediately counterattack. I'll show you. Pull it up. It's trapped in your armpit. Keep it there. As you overlace, push down, drive into place, and you can attack right away. But you want to get this knee down because this is a free leg. Traditionally, we attack the trap leg, right? But by using that pressure to nail that down to the ground, we've isolated it so we have some structure to attack it. Pull, overlace, trap down to the ground, and attack. You still have your top side saddle, but with this gravity, we can lay into it pretty quickly. One more time. Pull, trap it in your armpit, slide down his calf, and drive this down like an ankle submission. Roll it close so that he can't underhook this foot again. If you keep this out, when you go down, he'll just trap it underneath there again. So pull up, press it out, roll it away, drive the knee down. You're already in position. Keep your top saddle to go into your Achilles submission to finish him on the free leg. Your frog kick is a way to escape from his side saddle application. And even people that don't have a very well-developed lower half positional fighting game will inadvertently go into a side saddle when they're trying to attack your legs. So if you have just at least this counter, you're going to have an advantage against pretty much any opponent that's going to attack your legs. So he has us in side saddle. We're going to go through this step by step so that you see the key points that make this possible. He has his side saddle on. So the first thing that we need to do, can you lie down, is wrestle this foot open hip. By keeping it open hip, and I like to fight here to keep my shins in tight so that he can't replace. I don't care if he goes to attack my legs with his side saddle on. I just want to keep this leg open hip. So what I mean by open is I'm now open between my legs. I don't want to be crossed off here because now I can't escape. So he may be attacking this leg. I'm going to fight it, right? Working wrist control. And eventually, I'll bump it open, and then I'm going to wrestle it back in tight and hang out here. Now you notice I've hugged his knee because this is the next part of the release. Let's spin just for a second. Notice how I've brought this shin in here, like I'm in a shin squat. If you can't sit on your own shins, that's a really good developmental drill. Like you should be sitting seiza or doing child pose or warrior pose in order to increase the flexibility of your knees, because you should be able to come this flush in order to protect yourself from a lot of the submission hazards that happen in lower half submission fighting. So by hugging in, you're in shin squat. Take this opposite arm and drive it beyond. Drive it beyond his thigh and get beyond armpit to the top of thigh before you start going upstairs. If you do this too early, here, what's going to happen? You're going to expose yourself to the shin box sweep. He'll just plop you right back down. You've just wasted that energy, and you might lose your shin squat, and you might make him aware what your intentions are. So, hugging in, protecting this leg, fire the arm across, get to armpit depth. Now you're gone. As long as you take your time, as long as you keep open hip, as long as you maintain armpit to thigh, you are going to release this in the frog kick. So what you need to do is underhook his arm so he's coming up. You're fighting here, underhook. Now let's spin for a second. By underhooking, you brought your weight up and freed this leg for the frog kick. Frog kick's relatively simple now. He thinks he has a position, but it's humorous because this triangle is useless once you've passed the underlacing knee. That's the goal. So you always are fighting this knee back down to the mat. Once you've passed the underlacing knee, all you do is kick your leg straight out, not back. If you kick back, then you're forcing this foot into his calf. If you kick straight out, then you're pushing this knee off the underlacing foot. See if you can see this from this end. So we've underhooked. Here's the frog kick. It's really slick. And he won't understand why it's so effective. Because he can't see what's going on. So let's do it again. He locks it on. We wrestle it across, open hip. Come up and tight. Form your shin squat. Hug the knee. Fire your arm through. Get the armpit depth. Underhook. Lean forward to free the weight from the trapped leg. Frog kick out. Then spin around to whatever top half position that you need to work. Last time, I'll give you this direction. Fight it across. Get your shin squat. Hug the knee and protect this leg. Fire your arm through. Get all the way deep and start chambering this back. Even protect this leg over as you work to underhook. He thinks that you're fighting and he wants to grab a hold of your upper body. He doesn't realize that he needs to stay down. So when he comes torso to torso, he's helping you get onto your feet. Frog kick out. And transition to the upper half game. With this last recounter, you will be completing the flow in that he can only defend himself against the 3-step or the frog kick. If he's working back and forth between the two, he exposes himself to you reversing this into full saddle by wrestling across your free leg. I'll show you. Okay, so you work the 3-step, and he blanks down and holds that in tight. I can't get to this. Fine. I'll wrestle my leg up over open hip because he's occupied here. But as I try and come up, he blocks his knee down and I can't get beyond it. That's fine. With this knee down, it's not going to be difficult for me to come up and over. No, can you spin this way? Once I've created this false triangle with my knee down, I'm already close to accessing this. So I kick across, just like frog kick, scoop the leg underneath, and I'm in full saddle. So it's almost a variation on the frog kick, but I need to wrestle this all the way over into shin fold before I begin. So let's do that again. He can only defend against one or the other, not both. All right, so he's inside saddle. I grab and place this over. I attack here, he doesn't let me have it. I go to pass, he drops down his knee, so I scoot this underneath. Drop down for full saddle. Once I get my triangle ready, I pop the leg off, frog kick, scoop underneath his leg, and move into full saddle. It's a very quick transition. I'm going to give you one last view, and I'm going to show you a way to quickly finalize this with a submission hold. Side saddle. He's locked on. Can't pull off the 3-step, he's locking it down. So while I'm attacking this 3-step and he's defending against it, I grab a hold of this leg, bump it across. I go to pass and he drops the knee. Re-grab your own. Drop to the side and get ready. Once you have this on, and I suggest that you put the triangle on because you're popping this like a frog kick to drop him off. Pull this up as you underhook. Start going immediately into your heel hook as you kick away. So what I mean is drop your elbow down into the ball of his foot. Brace your middle finger into his knee pit. Pull it down to the mat to pop his heel up. As you bring your leg back, at the same time, lift up. Shoulder rolls back, and just chop up with your arm. to finish him off with your heel hook from a full saddle reversal from side saddle. Let's do one more angle. As he changes position, I want you to look closely at where I'm applying the submission. It's a conveyor belt heel hook, like I talked to you about in an earlier installment. From side saddle, you work your 3-step. He locks it down. Wrestle this across. Start to defend it. He defends against you going into frog kick. Grab your own ankle and drop it down into half of a full saddle. As you lock on your triangle, kick that way to pop this knee off. Kick that way. Immediately bring it back and come underneath to hook him over like a wishbone. But as you drop this leg back, pull with your middle finger. Pull this down because there's not much room. So pull with the longest finger down as you put pressure with the back of your tricep onto the ball of his foot to pop up the heel. Complete your slip knot underneath for the conveyor belt heel hook. Congratulations on completing the 3rd installment of Sambo for Mixed Martial Art. In your recounters, you're focusing primarily on flow, whereas opposed to your counters, you're practicing light intensity, and on your basics, you're practicing on smoothly transitioning through each mechanic. So on recounters, you're maintaining flow. In order to have flow, you have to drop the intensity down to around 25% and practice going through lightly feeling where resistance is being added. If you do this at full speed, you're going to get sloppy. Go down to counters. At recounters, you want these to be very responsive, where you feel where the resistance is happening. You're trying to teach yourself kinesthetic awareness. Obviously, you'll be able to do this much more effectively if you seek out a qualified coach in your area to get guidance on what you're not necessarily seeing. Take your time with your partners. So when you're working on recounters, don't slap on submissions. Focus on the transitions. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to come to www.rmaxinternational.com, rmaxinternational.com, and I'll see you at the next workshop.